this is our ISM presentation. It is over racism as it is portrayed in the mass media. We are George Washington Carver scholars, and I'm Isabel Hobbs.
I'm Samuel Peters.
I'm Greg Carter.
And I'm Sam Yoder.
So racism is the division of groups based on skin tone and culture, and media is any form of mass communication collectively. In our presentation, we'll primarily be focusing on digital media. Target population is the group we will be addressing in this presentation, and the group we are addressing is those who consume media regularly. Microaggressions. Racial microaggressions are brief and commonplace daily verbal and environmental indignities. They can be intentional or unintentional, and they tend to paint a negative picture of the group or individual being reported about. Agent identities are those who are privileged and take their privilege and exploit those who are not. They reap unfair advantage from those who are not privileged like them, and those who are not privileged are the target identities. And these are people who are, again, exploited, taken advantage of, victimized in society or any kind of system or community.
So now just a little bit on the history of racism in mass media. First, to start off with the news media. The news in our country has historically represented minorities poorly, oftentimes painting them as the villains in a lot of situations. So one great example of this is the Central Park 5, which recently had a movie come out about it in the last 2 years. The Central Park 5 was a situation that happened back in the 1970s where a white female jogger in New York in Central Park accused a group of 5 Black and Latino men of sexually assaulting and beating her up. However, they were all innocent, but they were still charged and found guilty and given 6 to 12 years before they were later exonerated. The news media in this situation painted these men very poorly, even though there was barely any evidence to prove them. Mainly just off of their skin tone alone, they did a lot of crowd riding and getting people riled up about this situation, which wasn't true, and painting all minorities badly. Social media has also been a very large platform where racism has occurred, mainly on things like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where racism and racist sayings have not been closely monitored for a long time.
All right, so in our society today, we often see racism portrayed in the media by means of microaggressions. Our research findings include a study involving multiple news sources such as the Washington Post, New York Times, U.S. News, and Wall Street Journal, which compared the use of the terms Black and white throughout multiple articles. And as you can see, the term Black was used significantly larger amount than the term white. And this proves that the media and news industry create microaggressions for its consumers. And a recent example of this as well is the death of George Floyd, with media and news sources portraying this event, the negative context, and kind of shedding bad light on George Floyd. And then the public kind of reacted to this with a negative context in mind because of how they consume the media.
Some of the solutions to these problems we came up with included increasing consumer awareness regarding microaggressions, so what they are, how they show themselves typically, some examples of the problems they cause in the communities that they affect. Some ways we can do this were to improve the quality of people's news sources, so making sure that they're using unbiased or only slightly biased information when they form their opinions and take action into a subject, and also teaching them how to identify their own bias, the bias in the media they consume, and how to avoid it or filter it out. to get just the facts. Another solution we came up with was to change how different news sources describe different races. One of the main points of that is making sure all races are represented equally under the same light. You're not representing one race or another specifically as bad or good in a scenario. You're presenting facts on everyone involved, regardless of race. Another way we came up to meet this goal would be that certain races shouldn't be limited to being addressed by only the topics that people think concern them, because most topics concern people of every race. It's not just one race or not just another that's affected. It affects the community, it affects the people. So they should be portrayed that way instead of just saying, oh, this problem affects this group of this race specifically, not anybody else in their community.
Here are our citations.